Hi, I'm Bob Airy, two-time Stanley Cup champ. You're watching the Power Play Break, the place to talk about pucks.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Riley for another edition of the Power Play Break. Today we're joined by Bobby Taylor, the color analyst for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Welcome to the Power Play Break.
Thanks, Chris.
Let's talk about, you grew up in Calgary.
Yep.
What were your first experiences like when you were exposed to the game of ice hockey? How old were you and who brought you in?
Well, you know, it's really kind of ironic. I mean, I think every kid back then, or at least, up until probably the late 70s maybe, you all started out in the backyard. You know, your dad had, everybody had a garden.
So winter it became a rink.
Yep. Boy, I'll tell you, as soon as that first frost would come, out came the garden hose and you'd flood the backyard, and that's how it went. And I had a brother, older brother, who was like 14 years older than me. And he was really good friends with Hank Basson.
Oh,
the old
he was Pittsburgh Penguin
and Detroit Red Wing and Chicago Blackhawk, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he lived like a block behind us. So when I was a kid growing up, I always wanted to be like Hank. And so my brother would get me out in the backyard, and I had pads, but I mean, the Sears catalog was thicker than these pads. You hear about all these old guys that talk about having the Sears
catalog or the JCPenney catalog.
Yeah, whatever. My pads had to be like this, and they were straight up and down, and I was just, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and he'd shoot frozen tennis balls at me. And nobody had a mask. I never had a mask till 5 years after to the end of my career. But anyway, it'd be bouncing off your head, and gosh, those things stung.
In the winter, it's got to be brutal.
They were cold, and you'd start to cry. And then, of course, he's older than me. He says, "If you cry, I'm going to come over there and kick your butt." And I go, "Oh, okay." He'd be like this. So I guess you could say that was my first taste of hockey.
Did Basson kind of instill anything on you at that point? Tell you what you were doing on he was a goalie? Was he kind of like looking out for you, telling you different things?
Well, you know what, Chris? The funny part of it is, obviously, he was always gone. Pretty much. He'd come back, and I'd talk to him. But, I knew who he was, and then, you're kind of limited for the TV coverage back then as well. And,
yeah.
Hockey Night in Canada, and if he didn't play on Hockey Night in Canada,
you didn't see him.
Anybody,
Yeah.
So. But when I got older, I talked to him a number of times, but the guy that was probably more instrumental in helping me as a goalie was Glenn Hall. When I was like 12, maybe 13, hockey schools were just starting to come around. And Tabor, Alberta, just a little town south of Lethbridge, close to the border, and it's known for its sugar beets. Devin Setaguchi's from there.
Yes.
And so they had a hockey school there, and the instructors were Andy Bathgate, Metro Presti. I had no idea who Metro Presti was at 12 years old or 13 years old, and Glenn Hall. Well, the Ghoulie, he's funny. Oh man, he is a funny man. And he worked with me at that hockey school, and he was trying to get back to Edmonton, so my brother, who brought me there, and he was living in Lethbridge at the time, we drove him back to Calgary, and he was able to have I think his wife came down and met him from Edmonton, because remember, he used to always have to go paint that damn barn every year. That's why he was always late for training camp. Well, I can't come to training camp until the last 2 weeks because I've got to paint my barn. That barn has to have 55 coats of paint on it by the time he finished his career, but he was really good, the Ghoulie. He taught me a lot, and to this day, I still remember a lot of his teachings, and they're pretty applicable now.
When did you start getting into playing on a team? How old were you?
I was really late in hockey. I got to play. Well, they kind of it was a change different back then. You were a tiny mite, which meant you played anywhere from when you could skate from 6 right up to 12 years of age. So. Right now, it's like every 2 years they've got groups. But
yeah, they move you up back then.
Yeah,
stay
back
for
there
one
was
team.
from 6 to 12, you were a tiny mite, and 13 and 14, you were a peewee or a bantam. 15 and 16, you were a midget. And then 17 and 18, you were a juvenile, and 18, you were a junior. So they didn't have all the different groups, because I can never tell, oh, my kid's playing squirt. Well, how old is that?
5, 6, I think
I don't
it is.
know what that is.
I don't know.
So, but I started when I was 12 in organized hockey. And we played on a team, I can remember, it was called Crescent Park, and we won the provincial championships that year. And then we went the next year, I went to Bantam, and we won the provincial championship again with another team. And then, of course, they started the AAA programs back then, and that's when I started to go into the AAA. It was sponsored by the Calgary Brewery. Well, Calgary Soft Drink Company. But because that's how, you know, every brewery basically had a soft drink company, because you couldn't advertise beer back then. So their ginger ale was always labeled exactly like their beer. So that's why I used to always call it, I got to go for a couple of Canadian ginger ales. That's how that came about.
Now, who stuck the moniker the Chief on you? And somebody else told me there's another nickname in there they gave you as well.
Yeah. Well, I was a kid growing up, believe it or not, everybody called me Doc. And it was because, you know, we had those provincial championship teams, and we won one in midget as well. We seriously looked like the Bad News Bears. I mean, we had this.
Who was Engelbert and who was Tanner and
all that. We had, honest to God, the only thing that really matched in our whole team was our jerseys. And we, you know, guys would have red pants and blue pants and green pants and socks. One guy would have a white one and a red one. I mean, it was just makeshift kind of thing. And we won a couple provincial championships back then. It was like winning the state championships down here, obviously. And this really good friend of mine's father, this Paul Lemire, and all the parents would be saying, oh, he's, you know, who we get this Knights of Columbus, and they all looked like the Montreal Canadiens because they all were so decked out. We got, oh, they're a good team, or this is a good team, and then he would always say, don't worry, the doctor can handle it. And for about a half a year, every parent in our team, who's he talking about? Who's this doctor guy that they're talking about? He says, Bobby. He says, he's, you know, the goalie. He says, you can be, and I was a doctor. I was called Doc, and even my buddies that I still keep in touch with that I grew up with, there's a couple of them, and they still call me Doc.
Now, was it fun? You know, today it seems everything's so organized. Back then, it was probably a lot of fun for you guys to play, just have a good time, and you win, okay, we win, you know, but it must have been a fun time for you.
You know what, Chris? One of the things that, right now, everything's organized. You know, you have to have an organized practice. When we were kids, we would go to that corner rink at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you would not come out of there until your mother was absolutely, totally pissed at you at 7 o'clock at night.
You're missing lunch, you're missing dinner, young man.
You're out there and you're playing, and you got 20 guys against 20 guys. And, you know, you learned to stick handle, and it was fun. I mean, you just played all day long. You know, and in the summer it was the same with baseball. You go do the same thing. And, you know, like, I never had a television until I was 9 years old. So it's entirely different. You know, they have the video games now and everything, and everything was organized now. And now, back then, it was, you'd call up 5 friends, 6 friends, and say, hey, let's go play. And we'd all meet at the rink, and bang, you go. And I think what happened is, like, you see a lot of really good individual skills then. You know, I mean, guys are so big and so strong, and they're athletic now because it's got to be the diet.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was so much different there. You had so many more freewheelers, like Stan Mikita. I mean, I see Stan every once in a while because he's winters in Tampa, and play golf with him a couple times. And you know what? When you talk to him, like, he was 13 or 14 when he first came over from Europe, and he started in road hockey.
Yeah,
playing road hockey, and he couldn't play. They wouldn't let him play. And so I guess some guy got hurt or was sick or something. They allowed him to play, and he took it up, and look at
the rest is history with him.
What a tremendous player he was.
Now, you're playing, you know, at this level, you're having a great time. Did you start to notice, like, we talk to guys here on the show about, like, they start to notice things when they hit 12 and 13 years old that, hey, wait a minute, I can do this better than everybody else, or this is not as difficult for me. It seems to come natural to me.
Yeah.
Did that start to happen to you around that age, 12 or 13, or were you kind of like, I'm just having fun. I really don't make a difference to me.
You know what was really funny? I was more interested in baseball. I loved baseball. I still, to this day, love baseball. And I love to play it. I really love to play it. And I was more of a baseball player back then. And I played hockey because everybody else did. You know, in the winter, and you certainly can't hit baseballs in Calgary.
Calgary in the winter, yeah.
In the winter.
Snowballs, but...
Yeah, you certainly can't get out there and shag flies. But I was more into baseball. And in fact, it was really funny. It wasn't until I was around 17, I guess, after playing AAA, and then Chicago wanted me to come down to training camp. And it was when They trained in St. Catharines, and then Buffalo Bisons was their #1 team in the American League, and they were starting up the new Central League, which was going to be a development league in hockey back then. And they were in St. Louis, so they asked me to come to training camp, and I think I turned 18 halfway through that year. But I was really more interested in baseball. I had 3 baseball scholarships offered, one to Pepperdine, one to Cal Poly in Pomona, California, and there was another small school like in Montana somewhere, and I'm not sure exactly the name, but it wasn't a Montana State or something like that, but Gonzaga, maybe that.
Oh, Gonzaga in Washington.
Maybe that was in Washington.
In Washington, yeah. Great basketball school. Good, good small school.
Yeah. So, and I was seriously thinking it, and then they took me to training camp, and maybe they understood that, because back then, the draft wasn't there, and what they did was they had, I was born and raised in Calgary, every kid that came out of Calgary automatically Chicago property. Yeah. Because they had the minor league team there. And it was, illegal as hell, but nobody knew it back then.
Did mom and dad at that point in your life stress education to you? Did they say, Bobby, really look at like your schooling? I mean, were they always harping on you? Was mom always harping on you to make sure you hit the books, or no?
Dad was.
Dad, huh?
My dad was. My mom wanted me to be a pro athlete.
Was your father a professional, or?
No, my dad was a janitor.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was a janitor. He was a lot older. I think, gosh, he was close to 50 when I was born, so he was way older than me, but very quiet man. But my dad was so bent on me becoming educated, and my mom was the one that wanted me to be a pro athlete. That's kind of a reverse there.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually the father's the one harping on it.
But my dad used to say, you know what, I don't know about it. Well, he's the type of guy, like, I remember my first year when I played pro, I went as an amateur to St. Louis before the 2-goalie system. Dennis DeJordy was the #1 goalie. I was the back practice goalie, or the backup at the time. And I came home and I made a grand total of $3,500 for that year. $2,500 to play and $1,000 to sign. But I wanted to buy my dad a color TV. And he says, no. And we're talking, late 60s. And he says, no, don't get me color TV. I want to wait till they perfect them. So this is the type of father he was. So, he was one of those guys that, you have to, this is
But he
it.
saw the scholarship offers that he said, hey, come on, Bobby, really think of your future.
Yeah,
right now.
no, you know what? That was the funny thing. He really wanted me to go to school, but he also knew how much I was into sports and hockey. And I think he understood that I had a chance to do something with it. They were trying to get a hockey program started up at BYU back at the same time, and I was going there. And I never signed those C forms. I'm sure you've heard about those C forms. So I never signed one at all because I wasn't sure if I was going to play hockey. I was really keen on trying to go to school. It was either going to be through baseball or through hockey because my folks had no money to send me. So I think he saw that I was really, really serious about getting my schooling. So I think he never really pushed me for that. My mom sure did. She wanted to see me on Hockey Night in Canada.
We'll have more with Bobby Taylor after this in the Power Play break.